let me introduce Jeff Davis. Welcome everyone to AgileAmericas 2023. Jeff Davis currently serves as an engagement manager for Xebia. He has over 30 years of experience guiding clients with transformative ways of working that improve the value delivery through DevOps and cloud technologies. The most recent 10 years of Jeff's experience has been focusing on innovative transformation based on Agile, Lean, and DevOps. And he's an expert helping organizations achieving business agility. So that's a very, very brief introduction with respect to time. All over to you, Dev.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, Sunil. This is a really great online virtual conference that you all have set up. Thank you for inviting me to participate in it. So welcome, everyone. And as you can see, we're going to talk about some sort of shift, some sort of change and movement from chaos to coherence. Since this conference event is an extension of something called Agile NCR, as hopefully we all understand that NCR places an emphasis on nurturing change and resilience. So my purpose, my hope in this talk is to do just that, to nurture our abilities, encourage us to better recognize things like disruption and anything that maybe even seems like chaos, disorder, or something else, confusion. We're going to talk about all of that and how, when we're aware of this, we have some techniques, we have some things available to move us towards something we call coherence. So that's the intent. Thanks for joining me on the little journey here. So chaos, what is chaos like to you? Do you use that word in your daily work? Do you find yourself or your team or people around you pulling this word into conversations when things are stressful, filled with ambiguity? Hopefully we all know VUCA, but that volatility, that uncertainty, all of these things that affect us in this complex world that we work in, and it can get chaotic. So maybe you haven't given it a lot of consideration. Maybe you just haven't fully come around to a realization that chaos has affected you because we use different labels like stress and other things, like I said. So in this talk, I'll just try my best, if you're not already convinced. A starting point is that in the seemingly simple, notice I said seemingly simple, daily things that happen to us, just the context switching that we all may or may not be aware is happening to us at various times. These things in our workday actually are opportunities rather than us having to react and try to dig our way out of these disruptions or just feel like a victim. I'm hoping to help you with some things that start you on your journey towards, let's say, mastering your ability to respond rather than react, if that makes sense, to give you sort of a competitive advantage on what you can do to move from disorder and confusion back into something that seems orderly again. So we're going to do our best to get better at identifying these things and improve our resiliency as workers, as people, as leaders, as coaches, whatever your role may currently be. This is certainly a lot of soft skills that are very hard, but important to keep practicing. So chaos may also be something that you've encountered, maybe more than you've acknowledged, like I said, but maybe it's not chaos. Maybe you've started off trying to tap into your best creative thinking, and you try to set up your environment, but things start happening to you, and suddenly you find yourself maybe in a state of confusion, experiencing self-doubt, maybe brain fog. So what seemed like you're kind of trying to get in the clouds of creativity, actually you end up just all twisted and jumbled and filled with conflicting emotions, maybe competing priorities that are causing these things. So again, I'm trying to give you a sense of recognizing either of these things. I'll give you some tools and framework models, mental models, hopefully. If you're not already using something, then maybe you can adopt some of what I give you today to help you identify this, and then you can take action on ways to move from that and leverage it even into powerful outcomes. So I use the word coherence. Seems like I'm alliterating on the letter C at the moment. Chaos, confusion, moving to coherence. That happens to me quite a bit. So what is coherence? Well, here's one way that we can talk about it, define it together. So some definitions I pulled out of some online dictionaries are things like getting on the same wavelength. So you see these multicolored lines with the incoherent label below them. That gives you a sense of, imagine multiple people entering into a room, a container, even a virtual space like this. And as they start to interact, they're maybe and likely not on the same wavelength at first. What's involved to get them into that common sequence of a similar wavelength that they all share together, and then they move forward in that harmony, if you will, harmonization. That's the change or the difference from incoherence to coherence, if you will, kind of a picture of that. Defined logically or aesthetically, ordering things, having the quality of things holding together. Here's a good one, back to the waves, but relating to or composed of waves having a constant difference. Notice there's a difference, but it's in phase. So embracing differences is something that we can do, and building coherence around our differences, if you will, in the workplace, in teams, with leaders, or if we're the leaders and we're helping people, go along a journey with us. Coherence is really important to us. It's kind of funny, isn't it, that we're sort of in a meta way. I just used some things to build coherence as we defined coherence together. So how about that? All right. So like I hinted at earlier, having awareness of these times that incoherence is affecting us, likely we're feeling some level of tension, discomfort, things like this. So Agile coaches, Scrum masters in particular, but many other people are out there who are helping our industries and our workers do more to grow in self-awareness. So how you feel mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally, intellectually, all of these things are a part of you as a whole person, and you bring all that into the workplace. So just like a world-class Formula One driver shows up to the track, or a professional footballer shows up on the pitch, they were intentional about all that they've done to get ready, to get their game face on, if you will, to be ready before whatever the big game or event or the race is. So what are we doing to be ready when we come into the workplace to face the challenges that we're going to face? So those are some things that I want to offer you. A powerful question. You can write this down if you don't use this or something similar. We'll talk about some similar techniques here, but just asking yourself right before you go into a meeting, or stand up or retro, whatever it might be, what's my present moment experience? When you're there with the people and things are happening, maybe you have to re-ask the question. So giving yourself a moment to reflect, to think on this and start to formulate some answers will help you be in a better position to be responsive rather than reactive. You also can better identify what's happening in your behaviors and hopefully in the behaviors of others. That's important, because I want to encourage us, if we're not already doing it, we want to notice these things and name them out loud for ourselves and for others. That's really useful to build coherence. If we don't name it, we are either trying to ignore it or avoid it, actually can leave that dissonance and leave that incoherence in play, and can be negative in how it might affect us. So like I said, our intellectual self, our emotional self, our what's going on with us bodily, if we have tension or stress or pain, these are important things to keep ourselves aware of, and to be finding things that put you in the optimal place each day for work and throughout the day to bring you back into a state of your best self that you can bring into your interactions. Knowing where things are hierarchically, has an effect on us too. And being able to call that out is important. I'll bring you some examples of that again later. Even the time box, like right now, we have a time box. That creates a sense of awareness and focus or urgency, these kinds of things, so that I can get you all this information in the time allotted. So that I'm experiencing those kinds of things right now. So to move us towards coherence during this talk, I just want to remind you again, my intent is for each of us to nurture our own willingness to intentionally adopt new practices, new techniques, new models, new things. We're here to nurture growth, or nurture change in ourselves, nurture resilience for ourselves, so that we can do that with others, hopefully, if that's our role in the workplace. So I invite you, take a moment with just 2 questions right now. Ask yourself, what needs to change for you, right? Maybe in this moment, or today, or in the very near future. Doesn't have to be work, it can be personal things, but have you given yourself time to just think, what needs to change? What wants to change? Notice the difference there. Are there things around you pulling you in or vying for your attention, wanting you to change? Maybe it's something in yourself, maybe it's outside of yourself. So how often do you use questions like this just to level set, recalibrate, if you will? That's for you to answer. But this is about your personal resilience. So mentally, we've talked about your emotional dimension, physical dimension, spiritual dimensions. Are you mindful? Are you working on these with intention, proactively, seeking out things to experiment with and try? And then how does that help you in the workplace? So if we're leaving any of these areas underdeveloped, then we're potentially limiting our effectiveness in our work and our lives. We're often being called knowledge workers these days. So to some extent, I hope many of you that are here have likely heard that, use that phrase yourself in the workplace. The distinction is we're no longer doing some sort of repetitive task or work in a factory or something like that, once we know the pattern, the template, we can just do it, repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. So much of this knowledge work that we're doing, what does that really mean? It means that we're being asked to make decisions. So did you know, here's a fun fact. Did you know that somewhere around 35,000 is the number on a daily basis? That's what it's like to our experience in terms of the quantity of decisions we're facing. Some of them are just lightning fast, micro moment decisions. Like just a moment ago, I made a decision. I saw the Q&A light up and I thought, I made a decision while talking to you to open that up in case there was an important question that I could respond to in a timely way. So I'm glad you, Sonali, you found the knowledge workers statement interesting. So yeah, we're making these decisions. Very, very interesting that affects us. So decision-making, think about this, is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Maybe more ubiquitous than we realized. So again, are we finding ourselves engaging in the decisions that we're having to make? Are we just sort of acquiescing, going along in decisions? This is something for you to think about. Back on that, what needs to change, what wants to change. Think about that some more. Making wise and confident decisions. Now I'm kind of getting more specific about these kind of decisions. Trying to make wise and confident decisions is what is more elusive. I find that really hard to do in the workplace. And I believe in the in Ram's earlier talk, I heard him touching on some things that relate to this. Just the way people will try to put off decisions, avoid decisions, the difficulty of that as leaders and how to adapt. So I think that ties in nicely with some of what we're talking about here. Okay, so how do we, as knowledge workers, help ourselves be ready to make wiser, more effective decisions? Well, first, be aware that all those decisions coming at us can really cause a lot of fatigue. So, what do we do physically when we're trying to deal with physical fatigue in our lives? Well, we find things to change in our lives, hopefully, whether it's exercise, stretching, diets, rest, many things to help us become more resilient against those things that can potentially fatigue us. So we want to do the same thing as knowledge workers. Our decision fatigue will be inversely proportional, I think, to our levels of resilience across those 4 or so dimensions I mentioned earlier. So I'll dive back into that in a moment, but I want to use a metaphor as we do that. What are you like? What would your metaphor be? I chose a rubber band here because resilience, elasticity, these words tend to get sometimes used interchangeably, sometimes used in ways of complementing one another. But when we're faced with decisions, when we're faced with disruption and other things in the workplace, and deciding how to respond to it, then are we like a rubber band and we snap back into our previous shape? Are we stretching and stretching and stretching that we might be getting to a breaking point? Hence, maybe the fatigue. What does this look like? Here's another interesting thing. Rubber bands, when placed around certain things, can take a variety of shapes and be useful, or can hold bundles of things together in slightly different shapes. So figure out if that metaphor is useful for you in the workplace on day to day. If you're sort of this rubber band that adds value in the ways that you can as you stretch and you bend and you bundle and whatever you might do. If that metaphor doesn't work for you, that's okay. Find something that does. But use metaphor to help you get more in tune with those dimensions of who you are and how you show up in the workplace. And mostly, find something that helps you think about holding ideas, seemingly opposing. Sometimes they are opposing, but maybe it just seems that way. Opposing ideas in contrast in your mind, but holding it, stretching it, letting it sit there with you longer. This is something that some of us, I've struggled with it in my journey, that we don't give ourselves enough time in the workplace to do that. Or maybe as a Scrum Master, as a coach, product leader, your team, you can tell they don't want to hold something in tension for long. They want to get right back to the solution that makes the most sense to them. So empathize with them that that's what's happening. And maybe they need some of your encouragement on how to be more elastic, more willing to kind of stretch a bit and stay in tension a little longer until they can maybe come up with a better alternative, collaborative and innovative way of working with whoever else had that opposing idea. So again, back to this mental, emotional, physical, spiritual resiliency, leaving all these dimensions underdeveloped, like I said, is something that can limit our effectiveness. So I'm hopeful that you're like me in some way, or can relate to, you have a desire to make an impact in the workplace. You have a desire to thrive and help others thrive. So assuming that's the case, I want to encourage us today to become more vigilant. Figure out how you can be more vigilant in how you recognize and skill up in the ways that you can embrace disruption rather than feel defensive about it, or whether you can find ways to recognize change and think about it, hold an intention to look for the positive way to reframe it and use it or move into it in ways that creates a great outcome. So these are the things that can give you more of that sense of getting through the day where you don't feel at the end of the day exhausted of all these things that happen to you, but you feel a sense of like a good exercise workout or something. You feel this sense of you've exerted energy, but you feel a gladness about it, maybe even a joy about what you've done because you found a way to engage with the challenges and get others involved. And you found a really rewarding outcome, or you're at least on a path towards that. So these are things I'm hoping to encourage us with more in the workplace. So might seem like a really stark visual contrast here, but give me a moment, bear with me, hold it in tension. Special operations soldiers, police like SWAT teams and similar kinds of people, what do they do to get themselves ready for those really dangerous, very high stress, high stakes situations? I mean, these are life threatening kind of situations they're in. Life and death matters and so on. Well, they set up all kinds of simulations, even mock model cities or old abandoned buildings and things where they can practice over and over and over multiple training scenarios and simulations. So fortunately, for a lot of us, the stakes aren't quite that intense or that life-threatening or challenging, but we should still be thinking about what am I doing to improve my readiness and to help others improve their readiness. So I mentioned the Formula One drivers earlier, but EMT first responders, there's another group. ER doctors, they don't know what's coming in next that they're going to have to quickly respond to. Pilots have to be ready for those unexpected things, on takeoff, on landing, in the air. Even other types of athletes being ready to just move differently on the field, run a different play, whatever it is, adapting. Architects having to draw the different lines and figure out the different ways to make something work and the constraints they have. Musicians harmonizing, using dissonance and other things. I mean, you get the idea. So find whatever is your muse, your inspiration, to keep you thinking about what you can do in your context, to train, to inspire yourself, invoke more of this for yourself, and innovate constantly for yourself, iterate, role model these things so that other people pick up on your vibe and want to do this with you, or find out how you're doing this to be so amazing at how you show up in the workplace. This leads to great improvements. So how do we do this exactly? Here's the big setup. Well, okay, spend more time with models. Here's my first recommendation. So what do I mean by that? So, wait, no. All right, this is my attempt at humor, but no, not these kind of models, even though Derek Zoolander is really, really, really good looking. But no, as fun as those models might be, no, we want to have some models visible around our desk, right? So, oh wait, I still missed it. Not these models. Although these are fun to have around for those of you that are fans of Legos or other sorts of model creation. It's a great outlet. Certainly not knocking it. Okay. Here's really what I mean. We can find all kinds of techniques and things all around us, but you may have them, but are you using them? So there's a picture of like what's on my desk. Literally, I'm going to hold these up. I've got those cards there on my desk. I took that picture fresh a little while ago. These are things we can bring in and need to be bringing into situations. It will feel awkward to other people, but keep setting up scenarios, keep doing it, keep trying it, push through the awkwardness, right? And look for these things that can create different ways of engaging in the workplace and bringing people in, getting them interested, turning their own thinking on its head, so to speak. Have pictures and things up in front of you as you're learning new techniques and models. Maybe the ones I share with you today, you might go out later and print out if you're not familiar with some of these things, and keep it around you or in front of you. And that way you have this daily reminder and you try to bring it in to meetings, conversations, and these kinds of things. All right. So if you're doing this, fantastic. Keep it up. Let me encourage you, and share with others what you're doing and how it helps you. So now I'll get into some of the specifics. I can only cover a few, very limited on time, right? But I picked a few. Hopefully for many of you, these will be great new things to introduce you to. Or if you've been introduced, but maybe you just haven't scratched the surface, maybe I help you get started on that. So some techniques, frameworks, mental models, kind of categorize them however you wish. But we're going to talk a little bit about something called edge theory of change. Spend a little bit more time on something called Cynefin, and then quickly walk through something I call the ladder of inference. We'll go up and down the ladder, so to speak. And then I've got a little acrostic or acronym, if you will, on the word clear, and something that I'm borrowing from Joshua Karevsky. So let's try it out. Let's see how it works. Let's see if it's useful to you. Diving into edge theory of change. This really, I first learned it from Lisa Adkins, but she, points us back to the real originator, a person named Arnold Mendel, PhD, really smart person, involved in psychotherapy, but also in other parts of sciences, just really like quantum physics, I think, and other things. Just interesting guy. Anyway, I can only give you the highlights here. Edge behaviors are really where we're kind of going to focus here, but let me get you there first. So I'm using this triangle kind of, excuse me, that went backwards. There we go. I'm using this pyramid, but sometimes you see this as just a very simple, basic triangle on like a PowerPoint slide, but I tried to dress it up for you today. But on one side, we have the primary thing. What's the current reality? And by the way, if any of you have been in like ORSC or the organizational relationship coaching, or if you're on that path, they definitely, I think, include this in their teachings and things and trainings. So there's the primary, what's the current reality? Secondary, what's trying to emerge? So you can, maybe, I already kind of set you up earlier with some 2 questions that kind of had this flavor to it, just to get your mind engaged a bit more and help this be stickier for you. But let's say the primary thing for you is you have a fear of public speaking. That's where you are currently, but you're sensing that something's trying to emerge, maybe because you're just outwardly being invited by bosses or colleagues, teammates, like, hey, you should really facilitate these client workshops that we're going to be doing. And maybe, okay, your fear of public speaking is now being challenged. Something about you and who you are now is being faced with possible disruption. Are you going to stretch? How are you going to respond? Well, you're kind of right there on the edge, and you've got now what may be happening to you that you want to be more self-aware about is these edge behaviors as you're sorting through the decisions around this. These aren't exhaustive. There's so many possible behaviors, right? I mean, there's as many as all the unique things that make us all unique human beings, but some things we may experience ourselves or we may see in others when we see them going through their own edge of change is they might get hostile, defensive. They may argue back, push back. It may seem like what we call resistance is happening because something's pushing on them, therefore they're pushing back. Some people, more like me, I tend to sort of laugh, giggle, nervous laughter, make a bad dad joke, something like that to try to, it's my maybe a way of avoiding or trying not to just enter into that right now because it's uncomfortable. So some people will change the subject in other ways. Switch track, we might call that. Feeling confused certainly is just another way that is something we're experiencing. And so then that leads to a behavior of just shrugging shoulders or, displaying that confusion, manifesting it in some other way. once you know that this is a thing for us, once you have this mental model of kind of this edge, well, if you've never had this before, now you've got a picture. You've got something you can now utilize. You feeling things. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? I think I'm on the edge of a potential change. Now you can try to do something about it. So to do something about it, you may need to incorporate other techniques. And likely you'll need to. So let's try an easy example together, okay? A lot of you probably use this, but just breathe. Take a deep breath. Let it out. It's probably a good idea to do it again. Get that deep breath. Let it out. So as you breathe in and out, then you go back to those questions of what's my current reality, what's trying to emerge, or here's another example. Make your own questions. You'll get better at this the more you practice, but here's another one. What's at rest that needs to be set in motion? Or what's in motion that needs to be set at rest? Sometimes just, flipping it around can really open your mind up to something interesting to explore. And then breathing or other techniques like this will help you get to that place of what we call slower thinking, deeper thinking, things that you can engage within, and how we're just designed to think and tap into all the amazing neurological things and physiological things that help us get to a more quality decision and a better outcome. All right, so you've got opportunities every day in and day out, to be doing this. So are you doing it? That's really the one takeaway. If there's any other takeaway from this, just are you doing enough day in and day out to see the opportunities to practice these techniques to make yourself more resilient? So, this Japanese, I believe, influenced art form of something broken. Oh no, we have sort of a disposable society. We might just think, toss it, it's no longer useful. But no, wait, that thing is in disorder. But is there a way out? Is there a way to repair, to do something about it? Give yourself enough time to be creative and you can find a way through. So, this is such a great example where this special fusion with this gold and other, materials, some rubber bands, there we go, holding the pieces back in place, and then taking the time patiently. And that's the hard part, but investing the time, investing the energy, and practicing this over and over, and you can create beautiful outcomes still. So are you willing to invest that time for yourself and for what you do in the workplace? Help others do that. Everybody wants to go fast, get things done, but there are times where we need to just create some more space, some more time to do some better thinking, make a better decision. So unexpected things can come out of it if we're willing to voice it, call it out, name and identify the things that seem to be creating incoherence, and encourage others to, let's give this more time and work towards coherence together. So edge theory of change, breathing, these kinds of things you can integrate, might be a great thing for you to start utilizing more often. So just like that edge, another way of thinking about what's happening to you when you're disrupted or interrupted, is, okay, now you're kind of in this transition, this threshold of like you were in one place, now something's happening that seems to be pulling you into another place, like from one room to the next. That's so what is that like? What does that feel like? And how do we create more of a framework to be aware and to work our way through whatever that means? So interesting word from a Latin root of limen, like L-I-M-E-N, not the fruit, but meaning threshold, liminality. It's this in-between space. And sometimes we're in that in-between space, and it's hard to know what to do, which way to go. So this is also kind of like maybe this pre-ritual, post-ritual sort of transitional thing, if you will. If you're used to experiencing that. Like maybe you have these certain habits, rituals, things that you do, and there's kind of a transition of getting ready to enter into that, and then when you're coming out of that. So that's often happening to us in the workplace. Well, where does this get seen or used kind of in our context as Agilists and people like this? It's in a framework, meta framework developed by Dave Snowden called Cynefin. I know it looks a little funny in the spelling, but it's a sense-making, decision-making framework. Cynefin is a Welsh word. Really doesn't have a direct equivalent in our English language. Closest thing as a noun might be habitat, as using it more like an adjective is like familiar. But as Dave Snowden says, dictionaries definitions still kind of fall short. So Cynefin. What's it like? It's getting a little bit sort of fun with it. It's like an empty vessel we can pour our context into, and then kind of see what shape it's taking, and then decide what to do, where to direct it. It's like water that can take many forms and be directed. So a little bit more about Cynefin. It's Dave Snowden calls it the place of your multiple belongings. So you're traversing transitions from different domains. So you see here in this picture where we have in this meta framework, it's kind of called, if you will, these different domains. So there's the clear, where things are known, things are familiar, might even call it simple. Then there's the complicated, where things are just kind of compounded, but they're knowable. There's still some sense of maybe being unfamiliar, but we can get to know it and deal with it quickly enough. There's understanding, even to the point that you can standardize and kind of move it into more of a kind of a clear, very familiar thing. There's complex. We know that that's probably where we spend a lot of our time, day in, day out, our teams, our leaders, ourselves, trying to make decisions. We don't quite know. Do we know enough to make the decision, or do we need more? So a lot of complexity. Chaotic is where there's that unknowable stuff. And then it's like a battlefield, maybe, things like this, where, yeah, just so many things are happening very quickly. And, you're wondering what to do. There is another sort of middle area of disorder. We'll talk about that here in a minute, or actually right now. So this is where confusion exists. We're making some distinctions about confusion. There's, oops, can I go back to that? There we go. So aporia or aporia, depending on how you might pronounce it, but this is where you're confused. And that's okay. That's a good thing. You can call it out, name it. I'm confused. I need help. And then you can move out of that, either towards complexity or complicated, something like that. Now, there's just confusion where you don't know. People are acting confused, but they don't even realize how confused they are. And that's where dangerous things, can be at play. And we really want to be doing things in such a way that we can keep ourselves out of that and help others get out of that. Move them quickly into at least knowing they're confused, right? Starting their awareness around your confusion. So notice this, there's different kind of ways that you can behave depending on what domain you find yourself in. And just like the SWAT teams and others I mentioned, you got to practice trying to use this over and over. It's awkward at first, it takes a while, but the more you're trying, the more you'll start to feel more confident in identifying where you're at any given moment. So in the clear domain, you sense something, you categorize it because you know it, you know where it fits. You can respond, you can do that, you can act on it. Over in complicated, well, still sort of sense it, but maybe before you can categorize, you have to spend some time analyzing, getting a bit more information, certain things you didn't know. But you can analyze, synthesize, kind of move right into how you're going to respond, how you're going to act. Complex, well, you got to do probing here. Like, there's some things, we got to figure these out. We got to probe around, do some discovery. Then we can sense what that means for us, and then we can respond. There's a popular thing out there as well these days called like what, so what, and now what. That could also be integrated there if you wanted to. Chaotic. Well, here we need to act. That's like that battlefield example. Action. Back to, I think, Ram earlier, this is where leaders need to recognize that, jumping in, giving some clear instructions, getting people into something less chaotic is primary, so that then they can sense more of what's next and then develop better responses from there. This is a great framework. The more we try to use it and recognize what's happening to us in our day-to-day. And there's these areas in between. These are the areas of liminality, those threshold areas. Kind of, I didn't quite get the artwork right there. You can study this on that. There's a great Wikipedia and other links out there on Kinevin. And there's a great book, which I showed earlier, about it. But anyway, at times we can be in those transitional areas, those liminal zones. And then we want to figure out where we're trying to go. We're trying to get some control, get out of chaotic, get into complex. We might be in complex, so we just want to build understanding, moving into complicated. And then you can see where from complicated, we might standardize and move into some clarity or simple areas. All right. So get familiar with it if you're not already. Read, practice, talk to others who might know it, see how they use it. But you might even use it, maybe not the diagram itself, but you might use some other pictures or depictions or elements of it in meetings when people are seemingly kind of in a moment of something chaotic or something confused. Help them, guide them, step into that space when you're ready, try it out. Even tell them, I'd like to experiment with something. It feels like we're here. It seems like we're here. I think we need to move over here. What do you think? So have a better conversation. Might even use it for some workshops if you're in a situation where you go in and you assess situations and help clients. You might incorporate it into your workshops. Of course, with teams, retrospectives, other things like that, it can be really useful. All right, got to move fast here. Ladder of inference. So this has been around quite a while from Chris Argyris Institute. So this is kind of how we think and do things sometimes, or many times, and maybe we don't even realize it. But we know some facts, we know some data. We tend to kind of select quickly from that what we quickly know or understand, or think we know or understand. We might paraphrase a little bit around it, kind of name the thing, evaluate or explain, and then make a decision. Well, you know what? Sometimes we just skip right up into the decision areas. We kind of rush through the rungs of the ladder. We don't spend a lot of time there. And we'll just decide, take action. And sometimes that's when things get really more chaotic, more messy, more confusing. So just knowing that that's kind of how our minds tend to operate, and that we also tend to skip, becoming more aware of that, this again can be useful when you can tell people need to take more time to work through something. Put this up in front of them as a visual and say, look, I think we're racing up the ladder here, but why don't we question our assumptions a bit more? Why don't we question our current conclusions a bit more? Let's seek some contrary data just to see if we're really on the right track or not. And let's be open to finding out that maybe what's happening and what we're evaluating is different than what we thought it was. So help yourself, help your colleagues to know where they are in their thought process as that conversation is moving up and down the ladder of inference. When you do this, you're generating, we talk about alignment, but it's a word that gets thrown around. But do people even have a technique for how to make it happen? Well, alignment plus coherence. That's the alignment is putting the puzzle pieces into play, but coherence is understanding what that bigger picture, puzzle piece picture, compilation of all the pieces is supposed to be. All right. So the more we practice this, we can show people that we're getting better and better at this, and they'll start to trust us to advise them. They're willing to be transparent in the workplace with us because we are being transparent too. And then we get more accountability, and we create more autonomy in how we're helping ourselves and others operate. And this is where that sense making really becomes powerful in the workplace. So that's what we're trying to do. One quick thing for you is an acronym called CLEAR. Here's just a quick one. You can throw this up in meetings or with teams, but say, hey, let's be clear in our meeting right at the beginning. What does that mean? We're going to be curious, caring, open-minded. Hey, everybody, we're going to listen actively to one another. So let's enter into the space, being intentional. Let's encourage everyone to contribute. So that means everybody's going to encourage the person who's staying quiet. Hey, Joanna, we haven't heard from you yet. Would you like to share something? Give them that chance. Welcome them in. Really try hard, agree together. You're not going to dominate or interrupt. And if you do, you call it out kindly, but you help each other. And then when people have expressed viewpoints, make sure you don't just say thanks and go, but take the time to repeat and capture their viewpoints. Go back over them. Show them that you heard them, you care, you really want to consider. Make sure we're helping each other feel valued in that way. When we're doing this, we're creating more coherence. This is cultivating great teams, great workplace environments. We can do that in any domain if we're thinking about it with Kinevin. So whether chaotic, complex, complicated, clear, or even the confused areas. So I hope you'll have one thing that you've taken away today in this talk. I appreciate you listening to me and letting me present these things. Thank you so much. I'm wishing all of us a resilient future filled with an abundance of more orderly systems, less chaotic, better decision-making with minimal trips into those chaotic and disordered domains. Thank you so much. Any questions in the moment or two we have left? Looking on the Q&A, didn't get any questions there.
Probably no questions. And
Thank you.
Jeff, your visuals were stunning. How did you generate them? Is it AI or something?
I use Midjourney. I decided to subscribe after a friend of mine showed it to me earlier this year over the summer, and yeah, I really have a lot of fun trying to bring what I'm imagining. I try to see if that AI and Midjourney can bring it to life, and it gets really close to what I imagine. It's quite fun.
Okay, great. So we'll hand over to Snehal to close that. But before that, just one interesting thing for all our audience. So very soon we'll be launching Agile Master Institute cohorts for the US and Indian markets. And if any one of you would like to upskill and get interested, you can get in touch with us. As conference participants, you get a very good price on that. Okay, back to you, Snehal.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. That was great, and especially the framework, explanation of framework. That was also awesome. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I hope it all gives people more food for thought, things to take away and try and practice. And find me out on LinkedIn, reach out. If I can help with any of that, I would be delighted to be encouraging to you.
Thank you, everyone. We got 10 minutes time before we join with Colin Johnson. Enjoy your small break. Do come back.
Will do.